Hi everyone, welcome to Wanderlusting Lawyer. I have sort of an impromptu video today, or it was not really planned until, I guess, yesterday. Yesterday was March 28th. I went to see the Santiago, the Camino Within movie. If you're in any of the Facebook Camino de Santiago groups, you've probably seen this circulating. I guess there's a production company called Fathom Events that puts movies, like kind of niche movies, in theaters for a day. I did see they're doing the same with The Way in May with some extended or new scenes. So I definitely want to go to theaters for that. But this one had been really talked about. There wasn't a lot of information. I think there was a short preview, but I really wanted to go see it. I think all of us get excited when there's any new Camino material out there, whether it's, for me, like these YouTube videos, movies, books, etc. Although I do want to be reading more Camino books. Like, I think they're mostly all memoirs, or I don't know if there are any fiction ones, but if you have one you love, leave it below. So yeah, I went to the theater, and actually somebody messaged me asking if I was at a theater in Florida, and they, I guess, saw me, but they weren't sure. So that was pretty exciting to know that some of you guys who watch this channel, you know, we may run into each other someday. But anyway, I just wanted to give not my review, I'm not a movie critic, but my synopsis of it. I know some people were disappointed they weren't able to go see it, and are hoping, you know, to see it. So maybe, you know, if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about what it's about, I'm going to talk about that in my reaction. So if I could pick one word for the movie, it has to be the word Catholic. And I probably should have known the person narrating the video. The main character, if you will, is a bishop. I think he is based in Milwaukee. So yeah, this is unsurprisingly told through a Catholic lens. And I definitely would say Catholic more so than more generally spiritual or even more generally Christian. Although obviously there's a lot of overlap. I'm not a Catholic myself, so I can't really speak to that. But some of the terminology to me seemed very Catholic. So just know that there are religious undertones throughout. That's not to say you won't find it enjoyable. I do, especially at the beginning, you know, there was mention of a variety of reasons that people do the Camino, but that wasn't really the focus. And even toward the end, you know, he says even people walking for very express non-spiritual, non-religious reasons, he has to believe they're called there by God. So take that as you will. But it is a religious-based movie about the Camino de Santiago, which, yes, at its core is a religious pilgrimage. That is where the history in the pilgrimage lies. So to that end, on history, that is how the film opens, with some shots of the Camino and an overview of the history. I'm not I was a history major, so it's kind of weird that I'm not a history buff per se about the Camino. Maybe as I get older, that'll interest me more, but he did say something I was unaware of, and that was with respect to the significance of the city of Zaragoza in Spain, or Saragossa, you see it with two Z's, in terms of that was where St. James, after he had kind of become discouraged on his first evangelical mission in Spain, that's where the Virgin Mary came to him in the Basilica in Saragossa. So that's a really significant city for the Camino. And I thought that was interesting because I've never heard of Saragossa in relation to the Camino. I think it's kind of like the city of Oviedo and the Camino Primitivo, which is extremely important to the Camino, St. James, etc. story, but you don't hear a lot about it unless you're like a real history Camino buff. But it was interesting because, at least in the movie, they said that's where they started their Camino, was in Saragossa. So I looked it up, and it looks like there is one Camino that passes through Saragossa. It's called the Camino Ebro, Ebro. It starts on the, I believe on the coast south of Barcelona, well south of Barcelona. I'm not sure if it's in the Valencia region or not, but it looks like it takes about 17 or 18 days to get to Logroño. That's where the Camino Ebro meets up with the Camino Frances. So it actually sounds really pretty, like those, especially if in, I would say probably the spring and the fall, are really, really cool areas of Spain. I've seen a lot of pictures of a lot of neat villages in that area. So if you have done that Camino, I would love to hear from you below. Like, please tell me how it was, because now my interest is very piqued, even though I'm kind of convinced I don't want to do another like very solitary Camino unless I'm walking with somebody else after the Aragonés. But so I just thought that was really interesting. And it was disappointing because we got nothing. There was like a visual of the route, but there was nothing. Then the entire, I suppose, documentary took place really in Galicia, starting in around Sarria, somewhere around there, Porto Marín and some of those areas. So the landscape itself was really that area, and honestly it did not portray the Camino in its most beautiful light, especially that region of Spain. When I walked the Camino Frances in July, it was so lush, so green, it tended to be cooler, there'd be some mist, and I mean, it was just stunning. In this film, everything was pretty brown, pretty dry, and I was surprised because I thought even throughout the summer, Galicia still got a good amount of rain. So if you're watching this for like the most beautiful landscapes representative of either like that remind you of your Camino or which get you excited for the Camino, there could have been better shots, I think, especially if they had started earlier on. I'm guessing their Camino was in like August or September. There were definitely beautiful shots, don't get me wrong, and there were some really like, you know, touching moments, but for me, the highlight of the film really was the interviews with the pilgrims. So I'd say the flow of the film is after the history at the beginning was sort of alternating between these short interviews with people walking, you know, that could be anywhere from 20 seconds to several minutes, and then mixed with some songs, mostly religious songs, a lot of them in Spanish about the Camino, so that was pretty cool. There were songs I hadn't heard before, some scripture as well. So the flow, I guess, as you're watching it and not knowing what to expect, it felt confusing, but looking back, I mean, that's really what it is. It's sort of a documentary, snippets of interviews with a lot of religious messaging. But I thought the interviews absolutely made it. Some were, I suppose, better than others. A lot of them were from people who were highly religious. Not all of them, you know, there was decent, I suppose, representation of other people that said, hey, we're just, you know, we're walking to get away from the grind or to spend time with family. And there was a decent mix of kind of people from different countries as well. I don't know about you guys who saw the video, but the story that stood out the most to me was absolutely the Korean couple. They just seem really authentic, and it was really touching. I like their story a lot, and I thought it was applicable to a lot of us. You know, the guy, as he's telling his story and what called him to the Camino, and his Camino message, like his awakening, is really, you know, all about humility and appreciating what we do have in life. And so I thought that was really touching. And I do want to say, like, even so, I will post here, I made a video about, do you need to be religious to do the Camino? The answer is definitely no. So watch that if you're interested. But I do want to say, I mean, I do think there is, even if you don't consider yourself religious, there was messaging in there. And I want to say the bishop himself, I really liked what I saw of him. He had a really like affable personality. He spoke Spanish quite well, and I enjoyed seeing him engage with people in their native language. If you've been watching this channel, you know that is very important to me, to the extent you're able to even say a few words. And I'm actually going to make a video about some Camino pronunciation. And I'm trying to convince my wife to do a French for the Camino series with me as well. But anyway, going back to it. So I really liked this bishop. I liked how he spoke. I liked his messaging generally. Like, I just thought he had a really he talked about religion in like through a lens of love, which has always been my absolute truth when it comes to religion, that there's no violence, no hatred part of it. But he said something that was so impactful for me, like, that I've always believed. And he said, disciples make disciples. And so to me, this was really important, because I've always said, you know, one of my goals in walking the Camino is to be a disciple, and really a disciple for like America in some ways, right? Because a lot of the world doesn't have the best view, and with a lot of good reason, of our country. So, you know, I speak multiple languages. I've spent time abroad. I have, I think, a different perspective than maybe other people that they've either met or probably more likely only seen in movies. So I like to try to view myself as a disciple, even divorced from the religious word. And so the point I just want to make is, like, I do think there are touching moments, even if you aren't religious. My theater, the couple I was next to, the woman like narrated like she had a response to everything the bishop said. She was feeling it. She was loving it. You know, she was all about it. You know, when he said something like, well, why are you walking the Camino? She responded, God, to him. So there were definitely people into that vibe, but like I said, it did seem like a decent mix of people in my theater. I didn't really get the best look. I think the majority of the people were maybe 50s, 60s and up. I saw one other young guy. He sounded like he was telling, you know, after the movie was talking about how he had walked Camino. He was just telling his story to some people near him. But another note about the video. So it's actually only about an hour of like footage and interviews. And then the last 30-ish minutes are an interview with the bishop at Ave Maria University, which I know decently well, in Naples, Florida. I used to live in Fort Myers. And I was tempted to get up and leave because I just really I'd been there to like feel close to the Camino, to see views of the Camino, to see pilgrims on the Camino. But nobody from my theater left, which I'm actually surprised, because I did read on Facebook about a lot of people who they left, or people in their theater left. Nobody left. And I actually thought it was a good interview. Like, there were questions raised to him from the group of students that had nothing to do with religion. Others did. But I'm glad I stayed for it. I thought there was value in it, in either practicalities of the Camino, or just, like I said, I was drawn to how the bishop spoke about his faith and how he came to his calling. So I like that a lot. But yeah, I think those are all my thoughts. I did not think this was going to go as long as it did. If you get a chance to watch the video, I can't see why not, unless you're actively like averse to watching religious messaging, which is totally understandable as well. But I think there's value into the film. I would have watched, you know, double the length of interviews with pilgrims. That's what I took the most value out of. And I just wanted to say I was a little bit surprised, because the majority, maybe because it was Galicia, but the majority of the pilgrims I saw actually were carrying just day packs. So I didn't know if that had really changed since I did the Camino Frances almost 5 years ago now, where that was still pretty rare, except among tour groups kind of doing just more day walks. And then also, I loved it. The bishop wore jeans sometimes. So you can't, like, it's not a real Camino if you don't see someone wearing jeans, I think. And that's always in Galicia, and it's always an older gentleman. So like Martin Sheen in The Way. But anyway, if you saw the film, let me know your thoughts below. Again, let me know anything you know about the Camino Ebro. And I will be back soon with another video. I've got some more giveaways to do, and I hope to have an exciting Camino announcement to make soon. All right, take care, guys. And as always, muy buen camino.